like all the yes, the one that says previously on X-Men.
That's right.
Good afternoon.
You can see that they're all doing signings.
Everyone's here. I felt a little lonely up there. I didn't know where everybody was. Now I'm walking at
We
once.
need sunglasses to sit here.
Okay. I want to thank you all for coming to our X-Men panel. And my name is Larry Houston. I'm the producer director of the original series, the X-Men.
I've heard of that.
And I have a bunch of my friends, best friends here at the show I wanted to introduce you to. One of the things when we did the first series, it was three of us, Will Menio, Rick Holberg, and myself. We were the ones who actually put together that beginning way back when. And my best friend finally came down, flew down. He's here with me now, Rick Holberg.
Nice to see everybody.
There you go. And I'm just going to go down the line so you guys can introduce each other. This is Isaac, and you might know him as... Introduce your character.
Oh, I'm Bishop on X-Men 96. You're also a rookie. Watch it, old man.
My character designer who helped me clean up all these characters for like 3 or 4 years, Mark Lewis is over here.
Second season, and was there almost until the very end of X-Men 92, actually. Yep. From Graz Entertainment over to Saban.
Yep. So this was my right-hand man, because when I had to fix stuff, I went, here, fix it. The next man,
I'm Matthew Wilson, and I voice Magneto in X-Men 97.
Do you have bones to repair something? The brave always die first, pal.
I am a coward. I'll live forever!
and the two that put together all of the wonderful words that you guys, the dialogue, the episodes, are the team of Eric and Julia Leewald on the end.
Original X-Men series, and am thrilled to be invited back as a consulting producer on new X-Men 97. Woo!
And when Fox had decided they were going to make the first X-Men show in February of 1992, and they had Will and Rick and Larry all together ready to build this incredible universe, I got a call the night before the meeting saying, oh, by the way, Eric, you're gonna be in charge of all the writing for this thing. And I said, X-Men's a Marvel book, right? And so everything I know about the X-Men I learned from Larry Houston.
Now, if this PowerPoint works good, let's see, I'm gonna press the button. And you guys recognize that right there? And let's see if this works. Go to the next button, and boom.
The bell at the end of this theme song.
There you go.
Now I just want to watch an episode. Like I'm ready to go.
There you go. Now, just so you guys know, the person that actually composed the music is this guy, Ron Wasserman. No matter what the credits you see on TV, that's the guy actually did it. He did X-Men and he did the Power Rangers from way back when. And so currently, working on the X-Men, because I'm a consultant producer on the show, the actual supervising director is this guy here, Jake Casimiro. He's the first. And when we first started, the three of us, it's Will, Rick, myself. This is Will, he's not able to be here, but that's Will Minio. He was like one of the three of us.
He's so young there.
I know. Man, we all were heck hair. You know, my friend Rick Holbert, there he is. And then me, I guess. And my right-hand man. Oh, there it is. Mark Lewis. And Rick, just to show there's proof, we were young once.
I knew it. You guys haven't changed, you just got gray hair.
And thicker.
Melted.
Oh, man. The three of us created the original, we tried to sell it back in the mid-'80s called Pride of the X-Men. And it was this guy here. And the zeitgeist, we did our best, but the zeitgeist was just wrong. You know, we had to wait until 1992 when you guys were ready, you guys were there, and you guys made the show what it is. I always have to thank the original people who watched the show, because most of you didn't know, we did not have characters too. But because you guys watched it, made it #1 for the whole season, we got a season 2 out of it. So I always have to thank you guys for watching the show. The next one's going to be Mr. Adamantium. The next is our time traveler, Bishop. Next is that little magnetic person, Matthew. And the bad guy that everybody loves to hate, Mr. Sinister, Chris Britton. This is Nightcrawler, who had a wonderful debut with the three swords. Adrian. And this is the new Cable, which was the original Gambit, which is Chris Potter. Next is Sugar. Next one is LC. Then we have the Beast, George Buza. This was the original Jubilee, Allison Court. And here's our Phoenix, it was Catherine Disher. And the guy that made Wolverine laugh a lot. More, Ron Rubin. Currently, this is Jubilee. Oh, hold on, that's Jubilee. This is Jean Grey, Jennifer Howe. Sunspike. Guy is, believe it or not, pronounce it Guy. That's it.
I like to call him Sunburn.
Sunburn. There you go. There's Gambit. This is our new Professor X, and man, you sound just like the old one. Our new Cyclops, Ray Chase. This is a new Morph. We got Norm Spencer, who was actually Cyclops in the original series. He passed away, but I thought I'd include him so you guys can see what he looked like. That's Norm Spencer. And this guy, the original Apocalypse, John Colicos, was actually the original first Klingon that Captain Kirk ever faced, was this actor. Now this is the team of us having a rap party about 10 years after the fact. But that's the team of us. We had a rap party with everybody got together to celebrate the show. And I wanted to point out that this lady here on the top, Margaret Lesh, she's the reason you guys had a show at all. Because back then, CBS, NBC, ABC, and Fox, nobody wanted the X-Men, okay? But Margaret, I worked with her at Marvel Productions. She saw how I liked the X-Men, and she believed in the show. So when she became the CEO of Fox Kids, she called me up, Will Manuel, she called the Lee Walls, and said, hey, we're doing a show. And she's the reason the X-Men got on the air at all. So I want to wish you And the other, I call it lightning in a bottle, because the other lady, Avery Colburn, that's up there, she's the bad person, the standards, the censor person that would usually kill everything, anything creative that you wanted to do, right? She came from live action, and so she was open to all the stories that Eric and Julia wanted to do. So she allowed them to push the envelope to get more drama and more action and just making the show better than what all the other shows were at the time. So I always have to let you guys know these two ladies were instrumental in making the show work really well. And I think, Eric, we finally met Chris Claremont maybe about 5 years ago, something like that. Yeah. We finally found him. It's like, and we had a great conversation. He enjoyed everything that Eric and Julia had done with the writing and what I did with the visuals. So we had a great time at that convention. It might have been Ontario. I don't remember where it was.
I believe this was in New Mexico.
Albuquerque.
And I got to introduce myself awkwardly, like, I hope you're not going to hate me, but I got to work on the crown jewel that became Days of Future Past for the X-Men animated series. And he was so gracious and kind. Thank God.
Where you should have asked me to introduce you, because they put me next to him at every convention from 2014 to about 2018. Yeah.
Oh my God.
They did it because he was not that crazy about the show. And he would brag on me, and I would go back at him, so it was like a routine they set up.
Now he loves it.
Yeah.
We're fine.
One of the things I got to do when I was working on the show was that when I was a kid, there was a Spider-Man comic book where in one panel, Thor went through the scene. Spider-Man said, hey, watch where you're throwing that thing, right? But Stan Lee, trying to promote his books because they didn't have a good circulation, he had the bottom, he said, you want to see where Thor is going, buy issue Tales of Suspense number blah, 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 right? As a kid, I was like, oh my God, they're in the same city. It's a connected universe. So I got the idea that when we were doing the X-Men, I wanted to do those kind of cameos. And so that's where a lot of these things came from in the show that you saw. The first time I tried to do Spider-Man, they said no. So Phoenix Saga, I got Spider-Man into the show. I just got an arm into the show. I got, War Machine. I got Black Panther in, but I couldn't call him Black Panther, so he was called African Mutant number 3.
Yeah.
I found out
that was what was in the script, actually.
Yeah.
And you came to me and it's like, that's an opportunity. We could sneak Black Panther in here since it's in Africa.
Yeah. The characters like, Doctor Strange is like a mutant magician or something like that. If you put the word mutant or alien, it went through the system without a problem. That's all it took. These are just some other ones that I put into the show. Hercules, and then Emerita, Starfire. And that's it so far. So just wanted to let you guys know what I did, what these guys did. Excellent work, bringing the show to life. I call it lightning in a bottle that we did because the stars were in alignment with the writing, with with Avery Coburn, and with you guys, because the show wasn't ready in 1986, but it definitely was ready for 1992. When you guys came up to speed and you guys were ready for it, and thank God you guys kept the ratings #1. Thank you. So I was gonna go down the panel, and you guys can talk about, how did you get involved with the X-Men, starting with the Leewalls on the far end.
Well, Margaret, who made all this possible, and is the most wonderful executive. Here, you're watching creative people going on and on about how wonderful the executives and the censors are that oversee their work, which you never hear in 50 years of work in Hollywood. You never have that happen, but she made it happen, and she had a right-hand man, a very strange individual named Sidney Iwander, who's kind of an incarnation of a brilliant 9-year-old boy. Weird combination. And I'd worked with him on a couple things earlier, developing shows for a Japanese company. So when they got the opportunity to do X-Men, I think, because I said I didn't know the book, he and Margaret sat down and said, well, of all the people we've worked with on running various shows, what's the tool that fits the job best? And I think Sidney said, I like the way Eric does it. So I owe this guy, wherever he is, back home today, this incredible opportunity. But that just goes to show you, you work for 7, 8, 9 years in the business and do your best work, and you hope. So suddenly 5 years later, this guy that you worked for 5 years earlier calls you up and says, you're going to get the new X-Men. And that just shows you always need to do your best work, because you never know what it's gonna, what fruit it's gonna bear. But yeah, strange Sidney, who supervised Spider-Man and The Tick and all of the exciting shows from that time, he was the hands-on guy for Margaret. While Margaret fought our political battles, he was the guy that gave us the notes.
And what Larry was saying about Margaret Lush and Avery Coburn and Sidney Iwander as a writer for the series, Saturday morning kids cartoon. Okay, hey, yay. But the word came down from on top. No, you treat this like a live action 1-hour drama. You write up. You do not write down to the audience. You make this as adult and mature as you can. And that was from the top down. And then when Eric and his head writer, Mark Edens, okay, we're going to tell heroic stories. We're going to show these things have consequences. And you said, we need to show there's stakes in this. We need to kill a character. And again, I'm going, Saturday morning kids cartoons, okay!
and one of the team.
But
first story.
Just so you understand, we only had 13 episodes. No one above the folks at Fox thought it was going to work. So 13 episodes and we were all gone. The point was, Morph was supposed to stay dead. I can tell you that now. He was supposed to stay dead.
Yeah. And you guys ruined that for us. Because after when the show had run about 4 or 5 weeks, Fox knew they had this super #1 hit. Fox was this tiny, just beginning station that maybe had 5% of the audience. Suddenly they had 40% of the audience, and X-Men was the main reason. And so of course, what executives do is they don't trust their instincts. They get a panel of kids together and say, why did you like the show? Who's your favorite character? And all these 9-year-olds in the room said, we love Morph.
They love Morph, yeah.
So we're starting to write the 2nd season, and I got a call from Sidney, and he said, Eric, I know you took a month convincing us you needed to kill Morph in the first story. Could we get him back? Like it really didn't happen. And so we kind of made lemonade out of lemons, bringing him back kind of traumatized, but it was not our intention. When you saw him die in the pilot, he was supposed to be lost.
Yeah. Matthew?
My involvement came straight out of an audition. The thing that was a little different about it is that we get a lot of auditions, especially in the last few years, there have been a lot of auditions for shows that are sort of making a comeback. There's things like, DuckTales or Thundercats or things like that. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of the time those come in and you go, okay, awesome. everybody's going to want to do this, so they're probably going to be able to get a name for it. What was really cool about this was that Jake, who Larry showed a photo of, Jake had done Justice League Action, and my wife, Rachel Kinsey, was Wonder Woman in that, so we knew Jake. And Jake had actually sent a message saying, take this one seriously. This is one that is actually, we're actually looking for people who can do this the best, not who bring the highest Q rating. Which was awesome to hear and also terrifying, because now we go, oh, we actually have to pay attention to this. And to sort of further that, we did the initial auditions, which they came like an audition, submitted it, and then we were asked to do a callback, which is effectively like a trial record of an episode. So in my case, it was episode 2, because Magida only has 3 lines at the end of episode 1. So, you know, it was episode 2, the UN attack episode and all that kind of stuff. And in the middle of it, we took a break, and I went from the studio, which is, you know, in an office in a separate building at my home, back into the house, into the kitchen. And my wife says, oh, Jake just texted that it's going really well. And I said, for the love of God, don't tell me that. So I sort of went back and you know, finished it off and finished it. And what was nice was that, and I was clearly not supposed to tell that at the time, but it's been long enough, and I'm pretty sure that both Jake and I are safe at this point, that he was sort of telling us this. But like afterwards he said, okay, I think that went well, you at least didn't screw anything up. And I said, that's the most I can ever hope. And then a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call, or I got a message from my agent saying, like, you apparently didn't screw up, because they would actually like to have you. And then I just screwed up continuously since, and they regretted their decision.
Mark, you want to tell us how I discovered you?
Yeah. So I ended up coming on board X-Men with the second season. At that point in time, Will had moved on to, I think he was over at Universal doing Exo-Squad.
Exo-Squad, yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
And Rick was still involved in the show, but I think you were freelancing boards at that point.
I was running Green Arrow for Disney.
There you go. So Frank Bruner, somebody who will probably recognize that name, a comic book artist, he had come on board as the character designer for second season. And as it was later explained to me, he had, they wanted him to both design and clean up his own drawings. And he was like, I don't have time to clean up my own drawings. You're gonna have to hire somebody to do that. So then I was looking around. I happened to be looking around for work at the time, and I dropped off my portfolio, and I got an interview with the head of the studio, Stephanie Graziano, and she said, we're looking for somebody who could do put comic book look to this stuff. I'd never worked in animation before. I'd always kind of aimed at wanting to do comics, and so they handed me a handful of some models, including Mr. Sinister, which I cleaned up over the weekend. And not really knowing how things were done in animation, I went the whole route. Like, I took the stuff and I light boxed it onto actual Bristol board and pulled out the crow quills and the India ink and like fully inked it, So when I brought the stuff in on Monday, she's like, oh, this is more involved than what we were expecting, but we'll pay you for this work and you're hired. So my first day on the job, I got in. I hadn't met Larry at this point, and so Stephanie was bringing me around and was like, oh, Larry, here's your new model cleanup guy. And Larry's like,
yeah, my deer in the headlights going, what?
Yeah, he had no idea. So thankfully it worked out, because Larry knew his stuff. He knew all about the comics, and he knew all about animation, and I consider Larry, he was my first boss, and I think of him as also a great friend and mentor. I learned a lot of things from him that I continue to use throughout the rest of my career in the industry. So,
thank you, Mark. And you want to give it a shot, Cal, about the...
Give it a shot.
Yeah, give it a shot with I remember you had your audition.
Yes, and I, excuse me, damn voice. I had never heard of the X-Men in my life, or ever read a comic book, X-Men. The comic books I read when I was a kid was Superman, Archie, Jughead, and those people. And I was like the dude in Canada for singing, the male voice singer for commercials and jingles and stuff, a studio singer, backup for people's albums. And bra commercials, 2 scoops, those are Raisin Bran, 2 scoops of raisins in back to Kellogg's Raisin Bran, that kind of thing. I did like 2 to 3 a day. Wonderful, wonderful, wonder bra. So but I was also known, I could impersonate anyone like like the Gravity singers, Satchmo, Ray Charles, Michael McDonald. Everybody, Michael was on everyone's album. Screaming, yeah, baby! That was the only part he'd do on the record. I needed to walk out. And anyway, so I got this call from Karen Gora, who you guys must have hired to do auditions to pick the people who she thought would be good for it. And she wasn't allowed to tell us what the project was. Not that it mattered to me, because I wouldn't have done anything for X-Men. Anyway, she said, would you be interested in auditioning for a cartoon? And I said, yeah, everyone wants to do a cartoon. I said, yeah, that'd be cool. What do I have to sing? Oh no, there'll be no singing in this thing. Oh, okay, well, sure, I'll go. And I don't know who was there of Larry or anyone when I went to the audition, because I walked in and they were there from New York, LA, the writers, producers, and etc. And in Toronto, Canada. And I said, so who am I doing? They said, who am I doing? She said, Wolverine. Oh, okay, Wolverine. I'm thinking of animals immediately. and I said, so who is he? Well, he's 5'3", tough as nails, would die for his best friends and for the people he loves to death, if need be. And I love the last line. They said, and he's cranky. Which makes you attest to it. I immediately identified with that. Cranky, I got that covered. And so, you know, I said, who do you hear him sounding like? And almost in unison they said, Clint Eastwood. No. You know, Clint is like very inside his soul, like, go ahead. And he would never yell. And I had looked at the sheet that they gave me to read of lines, and I'm looking at this one line, and I said, well, I had never heard Clint Eastwood in any of his movies yell. He's always like that controlled inside, go ahead, that thing. I said, this line, he's like very upset at someone. And they said, which line are you reading? I said, I don't know, it says, they said, oh, I started the line, they said, oh, that's Sabretooth. I said, I'm speaking to whom? Sabretooth. And I said, okay, my name's Wolverine, right? And he's Sabretooth. And this was a very serious remark and comment. I said, is this an animal cartoon? And they laughed just like you guys. Really, and when they stopped laughing, they said, no. And dig this, because they said, this is supposed to clear it up for me. No, they're mutants. Exactly, they did that. And this time they were rolling their eyes like, who said this dickhead? I said, mutants? They explained the whole thing, what a mutant was. And I said, oh, geez, did I ever get the wrong call? This voice that came into my head, and it just came, I swear to God, it just came into my head. I had no idea. Clint Eastwood would not, doesn't talk like this. And after I did it, I realized this sounds a bit like Wolfman Jack. Remember Wolfman Jack? Like from the Midnight Special, baby, Wolfman Jack. But that was not in my head. And they said, so are you ready to read? And I said, yeah. And so they gave me, this is the line I read. I didn't know the context. I didn't know that it was about Jubilee being thrown across the floor by Sabretooth when he laid up in the mansion. And Wolverine's over top of him. The professor goes by and thinks Wolverine's going to do something. Says, don't touch him. He could die. And Wolverine, of course, good. So then he walks over to Jubilee, and Jubilee's like, Logan, Wolverine, and runs over to get him a glass of water or something. Sabretooth. He just takes her and throws her across the room. Well, I didn't know that, but anyway, this is the first line that I read for my audition. All right, you egg-sucking piece of gutter trash. You always like pushing around people smaller than you. Well, I'm smaller. Try pushing me. I don't know if you're jaw dropping on the table, and they said, "Holy shit!" Read some more lines, quick, go ahead. Which I did. And they said, "That's wonderful, Cal. We'll be in touch." And I said, in my head, I'm going, "Yeah, right." Humming and singing, going out the door. And they phoned me the next day or 2 days later and said, "We would love for you to be our Wolverine." And I said, "And I would love to do that, whoever the hell he is." No, that's my sir.
Isaac, you want to give us how you got involved with the show?
I have to follow that.
Yes.
It's such a great story. It's gonna be so lame for mine, but no. So it was sort of like Matthew was saying, my involvement came in the form of an audition, just like we all get. We get hundreds of these things all the time. And what was interesting though is when I got this, the title of the show was fake when I got it, so it didn't say X-Men on it, it said something else, and the characters were all disguised, and I was like, what is this thing that I'm reading? It was just some other, project that was like, okay, this is some other cool animated thing. I don't even know if it said Marvel necessarily on it. It was just like some audition with a couple pieces of information. And then I read it, and I was reading the context, because it was like hidden within like a folder with a password and then another folder, and I had like keep going to eventually get to where my character was and like download it. It's crazy. Like Marvel was very serious about their secrets, which I think is great. But eventually I got there and I opened up one of the folders and I was like, okay, I'll click on this one, I guess. And I started reading it and I started to see the names and I was like, oh wait, Storm and Cyclops and Professor X, and I was like, this is X-Men! And there was like this, I didn't realize there was this dormant part of my soul that had been there it was like reawoken, and it was like, this thing is special, this is important. It was hard for me to conceptualize that the X-Men were coming back in a show. And so I was freaking out, couldn't tell anybody because, it was a secret, but I auditioned for the first batch of characters that came through because I think some of the main team is in there, like Professor X and Storm and Cyclops and all those guys. And tried a couple, didn't hear anything for about a month, and then a second batch of auditions came through, and Bishop was in there. And I am so happy that I live in an age where I got to grow up with your show, so I had some of the context to go off of, and YouTube existed, so I could go and look it up. And so I was very fortunate to go and look at Philip Aiken's original performance as Bishop in the original '92 series, so that was very helpful. And I threw out the audition, and about a month after that, I got a call. I was in a session for a video game, and I got the email from my agent saying, you got this role, and I was like, I can't, I'm frozen. There's no one I can talk to or say anything about, but so excited to get it. And at that point, I didn't really know what Bishop's involvement with the show was going to be. I was like, oh cool, this will be like, I'll be in the show for maybe like an episode or like half an episode, and that'll be it, and then I'll just get to enjoy it later. But this is like, it's been a year since I came to Wondercon the first time, and to see how much has come of it, it's been so incredible and so humbling. And I was going to say, it's funny you brought up Clint Eastwood, because that's one of the directions I got. I can't remember when this happened, when I was doing the first batch of recording. Someone said for a direction for me, they were like, it's kind of like a black Clint Eastwood, is the general vibe of this guy. Okay, so that's where the voice came from for Bishop, was kind of that feel. And it's been great ever since, and I'm so happy to be part of it. But yeah, now I'm here, and I still can't believe it. So thank you all for loving the show.
Master Hoberg.
Well, my involvement comes from the day I picked up issue #1 of X-Men as a kid. And I read every issue up to the point that we got together on Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and we basically connived to get the X-Men into that show. And we kept bringing it up, and finally somebody, it may have been Stan, said, well, couldn't Firestar have been like a mutant, and she was part of the X-Men? And it just clicked for everybody, because the X-Men at that point were one of the few things that Marvel had not optioned out to other studios. So it was a real opportunity, and we got them in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends 3 times, right? Once every season. And then when Margaret came to us and asked the 3 of us to come up to her office and talk about something, and she offered us a chance to do the pilot, we took it. And then we had a meeting with Stan Lee, and Stan was pretty obviously not involved with the X-Men anymore because he didn't know any of the characters we were talking about. And he said, well, I don't know who this is or that is, but if it's not Cyclops and Angel and Marvel Girl and stuff, why don't you guys just take care of it? And I remember the three of us just going, you know, we're getting the opportunity of a lifetime. You know?
Oh, yeah.
We got
Oh,
to
yeah.
do what we wanted to do, which was the X-Men.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a chance to do the pilot, and before anybody asked, I did not make him Australian, okay? I get that question so often. It's like, no, Margaret found the funds for us to do the show. Someone who was giving us the money, like Crocodile Dundee at the time. And he said, hey, can you make him Australian? We were like biting our tongues, going, oh God. And we figured, okay, if we could sell the pilot, we would switch him back. We wanted his money, okay?
I remember you guys set me up to take the fall because I was doing the voice direction at the time, and everybody was looking at each other, and I said, well, sure we can do that. You know, we can on it off stage, but this is one of the first times it's actually been discussed as, it was just all three of us making a decision.
Yeah.
It had to be made.
Yeah. So we did get that out there. We got a good storyboards from the three of us. We got excellent animation from Toy Animation from overseas. And it got put out there back, I think, 84, 86, somewhere in those years. But the zeitgeist was just wrong. You know, CBS, ABC, and CBS, ABC, and NBC all passed because they didn't. Back then, the superhero show should be like Super Friends or Scooby-Doo, and they just didn't get it. So, you know, it didn't get sold. Although it had good ratings and people really spoke highly of it, yeah, it didn't go anywhere. So, like I said, we fast forward about 6 years when Margaret became the head of Fox. That's when she called us in and said, we're going to do this again and do it right. And thank God she did call us, you know, because now we got that legacy out there and we're able to prove to the world that if you take a Marvel property and put it up on a screen without changing stuff to make it look weird, if we can do an accurate adaptation of a book, it's successful. People will follow it. People will give you ratings. And we were able to prove it, and you guys, you know, like I said earlier, thank you for being there for us. Woo!
Was actually telling me the other day that they're doing some action figures based on Pride of the X-Men.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That is made from the Pride of the X-Men.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's news to me.
Larry, I think I heard at one point, didn't you guys also have Russ Heath involved in Pride of the X-Men?
Oh God, yeah, that's right. Russ did all the models for us back then. And Russ, I don't know if most of you know who Russ Heath is, but he was like a very talented artist who did a lot of the Army comic books, the
DC Comics.
DC Comics. You probably know the names better than I do.
War Comics.
War Comics, and yeah, and so he did the model sheet for Pride of the X-Men, and they look gorgeous, you know. And yeah, I'm glad you remember that detail. At my age, things escape, you know, it doesn't come back.
Russ was such an amazing artist that I remember one day we were working on the Hulk and they needed a Sherman tank drawn just.
Oh my God, yeah.
And a couple of us watched him as he just looked at a piece of paper and then started at one end and drew a complete tank without laying anything out. And it was something he was just seeing on the paper. And within 15, 20 minutes, this whole detailed drawing was done.
I heard stories.
Well, that's the end of my career.
I heard stories about him, like he would like draw a horse where he would like start and he would like draw the back hoof and then he'd draw the head and then perfectly fill it in between without any kind of other
Yeah, you can see it
drawing.
all.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's from another generation where they could do that type of stuff. They could project the image on a blank sheet of paper, and then Russ said he's just tracing it because he can see it. But anyway.
Hours.
Yeah. So what I was going to do now is we're going to try and bring a Q&A with you guys. If you guys have any questions you can talk to us about, we're going to leave it open so you guys can ask us questions. So, oh yeah, back there, they got us all set up. I know. But at least you got a spotlight. You can spot them way over there.
Yeah, I can see it.
Testing? Hi. How's it going? So they said make my question quick. So I was just gonna say, since the zeitgeist is different now, does that mean we can get more characters that couldn't be named dropped earlier, like Deadpool, for instance?
Oh, well,
That's an interesting thought.
the only question I have to caveat this Q&A is that we can't talk about season 2, okay? Anything, or season 1, open season, X-Men way back in the 90s, cool, but we can't talk about, we all have NDAs here, okay?
Awesome, thank you.
I heard what you just said, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. You mentioned more X-Men are notoriously known for being revived after death. Any chance we could see another lost character?
I guess, anybody want to take that?
Guys, you're asking us about details of the second or third season. You know that's public knowledge, right? That they're already working on number 3. Yeah.
Can't say that.
Yeah. Not that we know anything about it.
You can say something.
Right. But yeah, you can't. Yeah, we can't talk about it.
We can't talk about it. Eric?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Here's what we can do. We can just make up stuff. Because we're not banned from saying things that aren't happening. So we can just make up stories.
Yeah.
And then you can decide whether they're true or not. So for example, Hugh Jackman is going to be voicing Toad, but Toad only ribbits. So they're paying Hugh Jackman $743 million for the season, and he's just going to ribbit for 10 episodes. I'm gonna get the weirdest email from like a $400,000 a year attorney at Marvel on Monday. Like, you went to 2 Ivy League schools and this is what you're doing, but okay.
The funny thing is we'd still watch it. Like,
That's what, it's gotta be something like that. It's gotta be that, or like, they're gonna have, Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart, but they're gonna be playing 2 like 6-year-old children. No mutants, just random children who are just commenting the entire time.
I like that. Okay.
So when you guys made the scene of the death of Magneto, and when he looked at Leech and telling him "Don't be afraid" in German, did you guys pull that from other comics, like old ones, or did you also may have pulled it from the X-Men First Class scene when we see young Eric's mom tell him to "Don't be afraid"?
I wish Jake was here because he could actually answer that better than I can, because Jake was the director of those scenes, supervising director, sorry. And so I'm pretty sure a lot of that I remember did come from the books, but the actual dialogue, I would have to ask Jake because I don't know.
And you guys have to understand what these guys did, the writers on this, that there not only were 76 half hours of our show and 10 movies, but there'd been 60 years of the books. When we started, there'd been 30 years of the books. And that was enough to try to swallow and digest. And at the same time, the demand of the audience is we want new shows. You can refer to the old stuff, but we're out here to see an adaptation of issue 116 of I Am Kind, whatever. They want new shows with the characters that we've chosen for the stories. So I'm sure it came from all, Jake and the writers are so well versed in this, much better and more than we are. I'm sure it came from all those sources, and it came down to, and he fused it into this one moment, and that's why it's so special.
Okay.
First off, to Cavdog, thank you for our meeting today.
Oh, there you go.
Second off,
the Phoenix Saga was actually one of my favorite stories of the X-Men, the animated series. What did you enjoy the most about writing those stories?
Oh, the writers, okay.
Two in a row here, I'll try to be brief. What I enjoyed most was my college buddies, and that's a weird story. We were working so fast on the first X-Men. We basically finished the first season of 13 in 6 months, and then we get about 6 months for the next 13. These guys had 3 years, and we're all really jealous of that. And so we're working so fast, you didn't have a chance to say, well, we've got a big project here called the Phoenix Saga, and I got these 2 guys that I think should write the entire 5 episodes with me. But we pushed that, and Margaret let us do it. And that's the one time where I was able to really pick the writers, Mark and Michael Edens, who were college buddies of mine and loved heroic storytelling as much as I did, and had about 30 credits on the show. But I was able to say, just the 3 of us are going to sit down at our dining room table and do this together. So there was a kind of control over that one, where every other episode of the 76, it was like, well, who's free? Julie's not right. Quick, here's one to her. Or here's one to him. It was such a fast treadmill, like putting out a magazine every week, that we didn't usually have time to stop and spend an extra time and have that kind of control. But yeah, that's why I think that story stuff, besides the fact it's a wonderful story, but the fact that the 5 episodes fit together so smoothly and make one nice overall story is because it was just the 3 of us and nobody else.
Yeah, and one of the things that I wanted to add, because at the arc of, Phoenix and Dark Phoenix, it's like 9.5 hours to show her ascent to the power and then the corruption of the power. One of the things I did was to bring there's no internet, believe it or not, back then. So I brought in my long box of comic books, and I would Xerox off pages and give to the storyboard guy. I said, if you find any place you can put these in the storyboard, use them. Because I wanted the show to be as close to comic books as possible. So I did that to make sure that it was as close and as accurate that you would say, wow, this is a living comic book, So I did that also.
My name's Mike. What are your thoughts on the Doomsday cast reveal, and where do you think they might go with storylines?
Wow, super impressive. I mean, they got a laundry list of characters. It's like, wow, I'm impressed. I want to see where they want to go with it. It's.
I've never been so excited to see chairs my entire life. I was mesmerized by that minute and a half. I was like, I'm just excited. It made me feel like I was like the kid in me with Marvel and all of this stuff. I'm stoked to see where it goes.
Yeah.
I have no idea, but I'm really excited to see.
Yeah.
The weird thing is they didn't actually hire those actors. The chairs with the names on them will be playing the roles.
And we watch it.
The bait and switch, yeah. Robert got all the money, and the chairs are being hired to fill it all.
A lot of CGI work.
Oh yeah.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. Thank you for coming here today, and thank you for the panel. My question is in reference to the cameo in '97. You guys had a specific Peter Parker, Mary Jane cameo. I wanted to ask, since in the '94 Spider-Man, there was a cliffhanger with Mary Jane missing, are you able to elaborate on your decision to include her in the series?
The inclusion of Spider-Man into the '97 series was done by Jake. But the thing that Jake told me was that one thing he was upset with me about was that all of the cameos I put into the series, all of them were unauthorized, okay? It's true. So now, every time Jake and the rest have to put in cameos, they've got to go a ladder of approvals, up and down. So the fact that the Mary Jane and Peter Parker was probably approved by lots of people. But it has no connection with the X-Men, with the Spider-Man series, no. It was all done separately.
Thank you.
Well, we knew that that would have been a problem for us even on the original show. So that's why we kind of avoided that with what we would do on the model sheets. For example, we have Black Panther. It didn't say Black Panther on the model sheet. It said African Mutant number 3.
Yeah.
And later, after Larry had moved on to other opportunities, working on a Fantastic Four cartoon, a guy named Frank Squillaci, who'd been Larry's assistant, had stepped up and was running the show. We did an episode where Juggernaut crashes into the X-Mansion and he's fighting a Danger Room robot that is looking like the Hulk. Only the model sheet does not call it the Hulk. It calls it Danger Room robot disguised as large green Neanderthal creature. So it went through.
Just rolls off the tongue.
Hi, my question's for Isaac. What's your favorite thing about Bishop?
Oh, really good question. I think it's kind of a multi-part answer, but I think one of the things that I discovered as I was playing the character is the fact that, and I've said this before, is the fact that he doesn't really have a place that he feels, at least in my experience with him, that he feels like solidly in one home, because he's always like jumping around to different time periods and trying to save everybody and just trying to like hold things together for his own interests and for the interests of the team and for the future of the X-Men. And just in general in my life, I felt kind of like there have been times where I don't feel like I quite fit in one spot or like feel like I'm enough of one thing. And so to be able to play a character that also goes through that exact same kind of dichotomy is really fascinating because I get to look at myself in a similar way. And I just think, you know, art is therapy to a huge degree. And so like being able to explore these characters in this way and then to see a lot of the kinds of other communities and other conversations that are happening as a result of being part of the X-Men in general is just really, really profound for me. So there's a lot of pieces to it, but that's definitely a big part of it. Thanks for the question.
Hi there. So you've already answered this in bits and pieces here today, but I'm wondering, with all the decades of X-Men stories told over time, what part goes into adapting those stories? Which fact do you cut? What sounds fun? Should we throw this at the wall, etc.? And what current X-Men stories would you like to see adapted for your version of '97?
Well, I think it's more of an Eric thing where basically we only had 22 minutes to do an episode, so you had to go through a story and just cut down to the core of whatever the story is, and then they would take it and make it work.
Yeah, and to be honest, when we were having to come up each season with 13 more stories that we thought would be the very best we could tell, we didn't come at it from a fan's POV, we came up from a TV writer's POV. So if we thought, well, I want to have a really good Nightcrawler story, what's the best stuff? And you do some research in the books, but you find the best story. Okay, Wolverine losing his faith because he meets this guy, and they have a real spark between them. Where does Rogue consider giving up her powers because with the one that was the cure? We thought of the characters first. We built the story, and if we could use bits from the books, specific ones that fans could see, wonderful. If there'd be an entire episode with not one reference to the book, wonderful. It's just what are the 13 best stories we can tell this year, and so. As long as we have the spirit of the characters, I don't think people miss the fact that almost all the episodes weren't direct adaptations.
Yeah, I agree.
Hi, I need context first before I ask this question. In the arc in the 92 series, the Asteroid M stuff, there, Magneto was presumed dead, and Gambit was stuck on the asteroid, and Rogue is talking to somebody, and she says, you know, I'm not really thinking about Magneto right now. I have somebody else on my mind.
Yes.
I wanted to hear what your thoughts were when, you know, we got our 97 version, where now all of a sudden, I care so much about Magneto, we gotta I just want to know, like, what were your thoughts? Like, when you did the 92 series, were you thinking that could ever be a pathway you were going to go through, that Magneto and Rogue knew each other before?
Thoughts? I guess when we did our version of the X-Men mythology, which didn't include Magneto, and what you're talking about is like what in comic books they call a retcon, where it's like, oh, by the way, you didn't know this, but here's what happened over here. You know, and that was done by the new team, Bo and the rest of the team who was in charge then. So that was their take on it. I'm not into retcons, but that's what they wanted to do. So that was their show, and they made it work.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, you're welcome.
Can I just throw in a little fanboy stuff here? I did the design for the asteroid.
Oh God, that's
back for Pride of the X-Men. And when that showed up in the new show, I just freaking geeked out. I go, wow, these guys are doing a shout out to me, It was so cool to see it again.
Hi, so I wanted to know how you feel about the fandom and fanfiction around your characters, especially on like the more modern AO3 Tumblr kind of crowd. Like, did you ever think that you were gonna see these amazing like think pieces and these long drawn out versions of like your very short, I don't want to say very short, but of your animated series? Did you ever think there was gonna be fans going in like super in depth to it?
I have to honestly say no, because back then there was no internet, so I had no idea that this was never happening. But it's kind of nice that you guys have found other platforms that you can talk to each other and enjoy the, what we created in the series and enjoy. So I think it's fine, as long as you don't get too crazy. Everything's cool.
Thank you.
Larry, you're the king of sneaking in cameos. So in the 2000 X-Men movie, there's a really cool cameo by George Buza who did Beast.
Oh, yeah.
He's a truck driver, and it's real quick. Just wondering why, after all these years of X-Men movies, we've never had a Cal or a Lenore cameo in any of the live action. Has that ever been discussed? Because Beast got in, and we have more X-Men movies coming. Ever been an idea?
Back when we were doing the series, back in the 90s, I told the people from Marvel, I said at the time, you guys could have played the parts. You could have played the part of Wolverine back then. You guys were like at the right age and the look, but it's like shouting into a canyon, nobody hears you. Animation, the animation people and the film people, they're like Hatfields and McCoys, they don't talk to each other. So it's like, unfortunately it didn't happen, but the thing with Cal, what happened was that he got hired. They didn't even know he was the Beast. He got hired for it, and then someone talked to the director and said, you played the Beast. And the director didn't know, so he brought Cal over and said, I'm going to give you the part of the driver. George. Well, George.
God, I thought I was there.
Yeah. So that's how he got the part to be in the live action film.
And there was talk at one point about me doing a cameo in one of the X-Men, with you. With you, not you. That's it. And they just wanted me to be a bartender. And Hugh Jackman as Wolverine was going to walk up to the bar, and I was supposed to ask him, will that be Bub? because he doesn't do the voice. Yeah, there's a great story about that too, but Hugh Jackman said, it's great to meet you, Mike, talking to me, but I'm sick and tired of this dear voice.
Larry, this is the last question.
Cool.
Since X-Men had massive ratings at that time, was there any discussion about doing an animated movie?
We wish. Oh, God, yes. We were jumping up and down and saying, if we could write 76 episodes and some of them are 5-parters, how about a movie? But it's a financial deal, and it's hard to think back now, but our show was a modest budgeted show that's kind of patched together. No huge studio was behind it, let's say Warner's behind Batman. So the moment we were done, we were all let go, and the partners that came together to make the show possible all went their different ways, and the rights went different. But yes, we would love to do a couple animated features, even direct to video, whatever. But it never The business never came.
It never came together, no.
And they've actually, for those of you who are wondering about Series 2 of the X-Men 97, they were not releasing it now until 2029. They're going to release Season 3 first.
So, all right, well, I want to thank everyone for attending the show. The signage is kind of weird, but if you want to talk to Cal and all the other voice actors from 97, if you look on the pillar, it says B8 and B9. That's where you can find all of them. And I'm over at B12. That's the best way you can find it, because there's no signage. It's like, where the hell is everybody? I have no idea. But
And I'm right next to it.
Bingo! There you go. There you go. So, thank you for all showing up. Really appreciate it.